Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Stuart E., and you are here today to witness an in-depth account of one of the most notorious men in all of U.S. history. A crime boss based out of the rising city of Chicago in a time of great turmoil. This man led the leading crime scene throughout the 1920s and 30s. This man was Al Capone. Infamous for his crime circle based around the Prohibition era, he made his mark on history through his accounts of bootlegging, prostitution, and gang violence throughout the 1920s. He became leader of the crime gang called the Chicago Outfit in 1925, which was dedicated to bootlegging, prostitution, and gang violence.
He started at a young age, joining a gang called the South Brooklyn Rippers and then later the 5 Points Juniors. This gang was comprised of young kids that kept their turf from other gangs and sometimes stole things such as cigarettes.
At age 18, Capone came to the attention of the brutal mobster named Frankie Yale. Yale hired Capone as a bartender, waiter, and bouncer when needed. Capone noticed how Yale used violence to maintain control of his empire.
In his early 20s, he moved to Chicago to try to get in the business of smuggling alcohol during Prohibition, and he also did other illegal activities such as prostitution and bribing government officials.
In February of 1925, Johnny Torrio retired and handed the gang over to Capone. Capone had been an apprentice under Torrio, and he was ready to retire and hand it over.
Torrio had been brutally attacked by George Bugs Morin and Jaime Wise. This led to him retiring from the gang and giving it to Capone.
In September of 1920, Bugs Morin and Jaime Wise attempted to murder Capone while he was eating lunch at the Hawthorne Hotel.
This attack led to Capone getting his car armored up, having armor plating, bulletproof glass, run-flat tires, and a police siren. The car was eventually seized later on by the government and used as President Roosevelt's limousine.
Now we go to one of Capone's most brutal killings. In February 14, 1929, 4 of Capone's men entered the headquarters of Bugs Morin's gang.
2 of Capone's men were dressed as police officers, so the men in the headquarters thought that it was a police raid. Capone's men rounded up 7 men and put them against the garage. They then proceeded to kill them, shooting over 100 rounds of ammunition for 7 guys. Capone wasn't actually in the area when the killings took place. He was on vacation in Florida.
Now you may know a bit about his crime career, but what about his personal life? Alphonse Gabriel Capone was born in Brooklyn, New York on January 17, 1899. His parents had emigrated from Italy and gave birth to 9 children. Al was the 4th oldest.
Capone's childhood was a normal one. His father was a barber and his mother stayed home with the children. They were a tight-knit Italian family who were just trying to succeed in their new country.
Like most immigrant families at the time, the Capone children dropped out of school early to help earn money for the family. Capone stayed in school until he was 14 and then left to take a number of odd jobs, including a candy store and a bowling alley.
Capone also was married with a child. He met his wife, Mary Coughlin, at a dance. A few months after they had started dating, she became pregnant with their son, Albert Francis Capone, better known as Sonny. On December 4th, 1918, they were married on December 30th, 1918.
In 1917, Capone got the nickname Scarface when he indirectly insulted a woman. Her brother was with her and got in a fight with Capone. He pulled out a knife and slashed Capone across the face, giving him the nickname Scarface, which he personally hated.
In 1926, Al Capone got jazz pianist Fats Waller to play his birthday party at gunpoint. After he got Waller into his limo and to his party, he paid Fats tons of money than what he expected.
2 of his brothers, Ralph and Frank Capone, assisted Al in his empire. Ralph was eventually the head of the Chicago Outfit for some time before he was convicted of tax evasion in 1932 and sent to jail.
In 1929, the Bureau of Prohibition began an investigation of Capone and his business. They investigated some of Capone's income tax violations, which they decided would be more likely material for a conviction. In 1931, Capone was convicted for income tax evasion.
Capone was sentenced to 11 years in prison, which was at the time the longest tax evasion sentence ever, given along with heavy fines.
In May 1932, Capone was sent to Atlanta's U.S. Penitentiary. Later, he was transferred to the Lincoln Heights Jail. He was then transferred to Alcatraz on August 11, 1934, which was a new prison at the time, and served the remainder of his sentence there.
Capone was quickly losing interest in the crime world. Prohibition had been repealed, and his health was quickly declining. After 20 years of the highest living standards, prison life was not treating him very well. Not to mention the neurosyphilis. One of the prison doctors even diagnosed him with the mental capability of a 12-year-old.
Capone spent the last years of his life at his mansion in Florida. On January 21, 1947, Capone suffered from a stroke. After a while, he regained consciousness and started to improve, but then contracted pneumonia. He suffered a fatal heart attack the very next day. The infamous man had finally run his course. He had organized some of the most brutal murders, notorious brothels, and ran the biggest bootlegging empire in the country. He may not have been a great person, but he was a big influence on our way of life. Whether we like it or not, he will be remembered throughout history.